What's up guys, Ace here. Today we'll be looking at the Zendikar Rising spoilers day 2, and we've got some pretty interesting cards I want to go over. So let's just hop into it and try not to waste too much more time. I think I should refresh just in case there are a few more cards in here, but looks like we've got nothing new. So let's look at our first card. Our first card is Amelia's Call, 4 white, white, and white, 7 CMC sorcery with create 2 4/4 white angel warrior creature tokens with flying. Non-angel creatures you control gain indestructible until your next turn. It also has another face of the card, which is Amelia's Shattered Skyclave, which is the land that enters the battlefield. You may pay 2 life if it does. If you don't pay the 2 life, it enters tapped, but the land does tap for a white. I think this card is an auto-include in most white mid-power, even battlecruiser, so to battlecruiser to high power, right? If you're playing white, this is just another planes. You tap this, or you leave it untapped. If you have like your opening soul ring, you pay 3 life, no biggie. And then you can play whatever you've been playing. Like you can play as if it wasn't even a planes. But like worst case is you draw this late game and it's more than just a planes. Like late game, this is actually just like a spell that can be used. Now it's not the greatest spell, but it can be used against wraths. And we know most wraths are sorcery speed. But also, again, most wraths are used in mid-power, where the only few wraths we do have are like Blasphemous Act in high power and Toxic Deluge. Toxic Deluge gets around this. But like, and then again, you're also drawing an actual spell late game if you're playing this in high power opposed to a land, which is actually pretty nice. Early game, you can play your Soul Ring off this. You can have this in another land, and you'll essentially have a 2-lander hand. I think you play this definitely in high to mid power. Low power, you play this as well. In standard, I think you play maybe 2 in a control deck. Like 3 life is a lot, especially against the aggro where you're playing this. And the 4/4s aren't anything to scoff at in the standard environment because it takes a few turns to kill with them. And the fact that it enters untapped in like the mirror means you get tempo off this if you draw it, which is also pretty neat. This card's so sick. I think you play this in like your 2 of in your standard control deck. I think the power lies on its versatility. Both sides are still kind of weak, but because you can choose between the two, it allows for like late game gas, I guess you could say. So I think around 2 of maybe 3, if you really like this effect, in a standard control deck or mid-range deck perhaps. And I think it's more of a, it's obviously one of it in EDH, but you definitely play this in your battlecruiser to high power EDH decks. I think is a sweet card. Like a 7 mana is still a lot, but would you rather play a 7 mana sorcery or a land when you're like 5 turns in the game and you have nothing else to do? Of course, like if you're high power, you're playing fetches, but if you're playing mono white in high power, lol, I know, but but hear me out. Next up, we have Roiling Vortex, 1 in a red enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana is spent to cast it, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. For red, your opponents can't gain life this turn. Okay, this is definitely a card I can get behind because okay, I think this be played, and I think it wants to be played in high power, but I think mid power is generally where it's gonna be best at. That's because would you really tap for 2 early in the game to play this in high power or even like CEDH? Because that's where most of the free spells are being played. In mid power, there are a few being played, but if like most being played in high power, do you really want to kill them through like burn damage? I mean, this makes it more possible. Like I think around 2 on average of non spells that are being cast for free are being played in high power, so this deals like at least 10 damage a game. So then if your opponent started at 30 life, how would you use that? That means you'd be playing a more of a creature based plan in CEDH, and that usually isn't that viable unless you're playing like Winota or like some weird red Staxy deck. I mean, it's good in that case. But like, I really don't see myself wanting to tap out in high power to play this effect. It does deal a decent amount of damage to them though. Like you want to tap out early too, because that's when people are like throwing in their Moxes and Crypts, right? So then if that's the case, like, do they really want to take 10 damage for that? And if they top deck it, that just nullifies their draw. If you're playing an aggro-based strategy. I mean, even if you're not playing an aggro-based strategy, they have cards like Ancient Tomb, Mana Crypt to kill them. So this like slowly whittles them down. This card seems not too bad. Maybe in like a few fringe decks in high power, the CDH would play this. I don't think you want to play it in like Battlecruiser or mid power though. It's a sweet card. I like this card, but I feel like I want to shoehorn this in some sort of deck, but I don't know what deck I'd want to shoehorn it into. Okay, next up we have Tobrex, Hope's Demise, 2 and a black, legendary creature, Demon Cleric, with flying. Tobrex, Hope's Demise, has lifelink as long as it has 5 more counters on it. One other non-token creature you control dies, put up a surplus counter on Tobrex. If it was a cleric, you may draw a card. If you do, you lose 1 life. 2/2. This card seems so sweet, and I'm kind of sad that I don't have any like black cleric decks, because this seems like a wicked metal card. Tobrex, Hope's Demise. Like this is this is that card. Obviously, Shadowborn Apostles, you play this in, right? As the leader. You sack Apostles, you gain that many cards, lose that many life. But then you've got a flying lifelinker to gain that life back, so it doesn't matter. It's flying, and there are a lot of decks just can't handle flying creatures, and so commander damage is definitely a thing in that game. In a game with Tobrex, this is a sweet commander. Obviously, it's probably battle cruiser to mid power, but like this is a sweet effect. I don't think at all, like seeing from the clerics we've seen already, I don't think this sort of effect is particularly going to be good in standard, but it's cute if you do like a standard cleric theme. Definitely be cute. Alright, next up we have Nighthawk Scavenger, 1 black, creature, vampire, rogue, flying, death touch, lifelink. Nighthawk Scavenger's power is equal to 1+ number of card types in your opponent's graveyards. So it's a 1+ star 3. This card is sweet. Like I think this is generally a 2/3. Like with nothing, your opponent's like without killing any of your opponent's creatures because of like lands and like spells and abilities and spells usually. So it's just like a 2/3 lifelinker most of the time. This is a Nighthawk, Vampire Nighthawk, which is pretty good. The more stuff you destroy on the opponent's side, the larger it gets. So it becomes a win con in itself. This is a sweet card. Like it blocks and trades upwards as well, which is pretty sweet. This is like a good mid-range deck. I think you play this in, is it any black deck? Like at worst, it trades favorably with most things. It has lifelink and death touch, so it can like just stand there like a hired prisoner or a plague rat, whatever the first 1/1 death touch. That's 1 CMC was. This card is sweet. Like I think even you play this, you could play this in EDH as well. Like I think this is more than just a standard deck would play this, because it's in your opponent's graveyards. So if your opponents are playing a lot of stuff, this becomes big and a blocker, and also just gives you a bunch of life. Too bad it's not a cleric though. Vampire, cleric, rogue. If they only did that. This card is pretty sweet. You would play it obviously in like, I'd say obvious, like I know, but like it's probably gonna be going in battlecruiser / mid power decks. This card is sweet though. Flying, death touch, and lifelink, and it gets super big. Like I think there's like 9 card types. In most games, you'll see about like 5 in the graveyard. So would you play a 6/3, a 6/3 for 3 with flying, death touch, lifelink? I think you would. Like late game, it blocks. Like you would, like top decking this isn't bad in like both formats, standard and EDH. So next up is a sweet, I would think is like a decent battlecruiser to mid power card for EDH. That's Shidru Shelter. So Shidru Shelter reads 1 and a white instant, target creature you control against protection of a color of your choice until end of turn. But it also has on the other side of it a land that enters the battlefield tapped for 1 white, and it's in the uncommon section of the DFC cards. This is pretty sweet. I think you like, maybe I even play this in my Mangar deck because I do want to protect my commander, but also drawing this early game and I need a land just to keep on par with everyone else. Like this is probably good too. Or if I have like 2 protection spells in my hand, maybe I want to get rid of one. Just play this as a land. This is pretty good. I think this is pretty good for my purposes, I suppose. Alright, so next up, we are going to talk about Kalani Ambush. This is a pretty sweet card too. So target creature you control. Oh, so all right, let's go over it. Kalani Ambush is a 2 and a green instant. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control for 3 mana. It's, I think, a little bit overcosted, but again, the power of these DFC cards are based on its utility. You can play either or side. Like if you need a land, you play this early. But if you don't need a land, this is just a removal spell. This is sweet. In green, like this is a pretty strong ability. Like if you really don't have a 1-drop or maybe a 2-drop, you play this on turn 2 or 1. Then turn 3, if you have something, you can just use this as a removal spell. This is pretty strong. I like it. This is really sweet. Good card. I think this is a good card. Next up, we have, I think you play this, all right, in Standard. Maybe you play it in Green Stompy. Maybe? But you don't want to miss your 1-drops. The only one relevant 1-drop, I think, is on the Lovestruck Beast. But, like, other than that, like, after rotation, there's no other good 1-drop. So maybe this is worth it. You know, like, you probably have 2 cards in hand, and hopefully it's not doubles of these. So it's probably worth it in Stompy. So yeah, maybe you play 1 or 2 in your green Stompy list. I think you play this in every mid battlecruiser to mid power EDH deck. There's a sweet card. Next up, we have Vaguest Recovery, 2 and a green sorcery. Return target creature card or return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Ooh. But it also has on its other side Vaguest Sanctuary. Enters tapped, but you can tap it to add a green. This is a pretty strong regrowth effect. The fact that it's a land is pretty cool. If you have a way to bounce this and then play it as a land, ooh, or play it as a land, then bounce it back for the regrowth effect, that'd be kind of sweet. I think this is a strong card too. You probably play this in Battlecruiser mid power EDH as well. I don't think it's strong in Standard, but definitely EDH would play this. And like, especially like Battlecruiser, you definitely play this over regrowth because you always have a bajillion mana, right? This is a sweet card. This is, play this in your green decks, Battlecruiser people. I'm pretty sure you'll like it. I'm pretty sure. Archpriest of Iona, which is 1 and a white creature human cleric. Archpriest of Iona's power is equal to the number of creatures in your party. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. This is a star 2. This is pretty decent. I think if there's an aggro-based white deck, they want to play this. This effect seems kind of me at first, but when like you're playing clerics, warriors, wizards, and perhaps rogues, this is like a 5/2 in the air. It also counts itself, so you don't need a cleric. So it's like a 5/2 in the air for 1 mana. It reminds me of Toolcraft Exemplar. But this is a lot harder to buff than Toolcraft Exemplar. This is a sweet card. I like this card. I like this card a lot. This card is sweet.